So our topic on this research article is the evolution of desiccation tolerance from chlorophytes to streptophytes. So to start out, we just wanted to do a little review between the chlorophyte group and the streptophyte group. And basically what desiccation tolerance is the ability to overcome when you dry out and there's no water available. So the chlorophyte group specifically comes before the streptophyte. That's represented by chlorophyta right here. That is basically the common ancestor that eventually the land plants over here share, and streptophytes include everything that came after the chlorophyta. And so when we talk about chlorophyta, we're mainly talking about green algae. And the green algae originally, or I guess still, they are mainly marine and aquatic plants or algae. So they eventually had to evolve to make the transition from water to land. And when that happened, they specifically had to overcome a few problems, and that included overcoming gravity and also UV radiation, because that can harm their cells and their DNA and whatnot, and also how they are going to find nutrients because they're on land and not in water. And then, like we mentioned, desiccation tolerance, and that's what we're going to focus on. So there are a few things that we found that helped with desiccation tolerance, or in other words, the ability to overcome what happens when the plant dries out. So the first thing is cross walls. And this little picture right here, you can see a cross wall between these two cells. And what this article pointed out is the appearance of cross walls in desiccated samples, which are strongly undulating, which means that they're very wavy and flexible, which helps maintain structural integrity in the dried state and helps maintain the turgor pressure. So basically it helps retain the water until there's more water available for the algae.
So another attribute that was important in developing this desiccation tolerance was the rapid reduction of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is how these algae make their energy. And obviously when the water levels are low, it's going to have to reduce that production of energy just because photosynthesis splits water to create energy. So like it says, dehydration tolerance mechanisms involve maintaining homeostasis during dehydration as long as possible by actively regulating the water status. So with your chlorophytes, with your green algae, because they live in aquatic environments, they're not really worried about losing the water, so they don't really need the ability to control the rate of photosynthesis. Their priority is just growth and reproduction. Now, as we get further in the line, with streptophytes and with these other organisms, there's the possibility that in the environment they're in, there could be moments of low water. Let's say they're in like a pond and it dries up. So they have this moment where they don't have the water that they used to. So they need the ability to slow down the rate of photosynthesis and conserve that water that they do have. Another thing that was found in the streptophytes with their ability to tolerate the lack of water was the LEA2 protein. So the LEA proteins are proteins that respond with abiotic stresses. So it's going to be this one. So this next slide, they sequenced the genome of chlorophytes from streptophytes and a couple other organisms down that line. And it is shown, if you can see right here, that from the chlorophyte to the streptophyte, there was a development of the LEA2 protein. So with this LEA2 protein, scientists believe that this is something that helps it respond to the lack of water. Like I said, the LEA2 protein or the LEA proteins are for abiotic stresses. So it can be in response to UV, in response to other factors that would inhibit its growth or survival. But the LEA2 protein is a strong indicator between the chlorophytes and the streptophytes that most scientists believe is a result of desiccation tolerance. So now the question is, what's next? What do we know? Where do we go from here? So like in the previous slide, looking at the LEA proteins, a lot of scientists predict that has to do with desiccation tolerance. But a lot of the mechanisms by which it accomplishes that are unknown. There's a lot of evidences out there that show it is upregulated in leaves and roots where water is most important. So there's a lot of evidence and a lot of knowledge about LEA proteins, but exactly how they function, what they do, is still relatively unknown. Another thing is interesting, if we go back to this previous slide, you can see a gene that the chlorophytes have is dehydrin that was lost in the streptophytes, but then is regained in other organisms down the line. So dehydrin, we know it enhances tolerance to various abiotic stresses, but scientists are still unaware of why that gene was lost in that time between streptophytes. So just the understanding of where that gene went is something that still needs to be researched. But that is our presentation of the desiccation tolerance between streptophytes and chlorophytes.